If you are using a piece of writing to inspire you or someone else's prompt, in a sense, you are writing in community.
We're good? You all ready? You good? Ready? Good. All right, ready? All right, here we go. All right, here we go.
What's good, y'all? Welcome back for another episode of Conversation Piece, your place to discover the untold stories right here in Indianapolis. My name is Patrick Armstrong. I am your host, and I'm excited to be back with you in 2025, the year of community. We are in the throes of April right now. We're getting ready for our 4th month of the Open Door. Lots of really fun stuff happening here on the show. Also have a really exciting announcement at the end of this month, maybe the end of this episode. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here, so I'm just going to share that now. However, before we get to that announcement, we have a really exciting conversation for you today. My guest today is on a lifelong mission through poetry and the transformative power of storytelling to make the pursuit and vision of what has not yet been irresistible, to inspire curiosity and challenge how we engage with the world. In addition to her award-winning work as a poet and author, she is also a teaching artist, editor, organizer, educator, practicing Afrofuturist, and avid anime lover. On top of all of that, she is also the founder of Unlearn Arts, a poetry organization that centers women and non-binary poets and writers in the Black diaspora by cultivating writing spaces, professional growth, and personal wellness. There is so much to cover in so little time. So without further ado, it is my great joy and privilege to welcome Chantel Massey to the show. Chantel, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
100%. We have been trying to make this happen for a little bit.
Yeah.
And we finally done it. We had a really great conversation at Tease Me. Shout out to Tease Me. And I'm just really excited to sit down and learn more about your craft, your work, and your story. So thank you.
Thank you.
I want to start with something very recent.
Okay.
You recently completed your MFA. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
100%. How are you feeling? How does it feel to be done with that program?
It feels, honestly, I know a lot of people hate MFA programs. A lot of people who've gone through them don't like, I feel like I've never heard great stories about their experience.
Interesting.
But my experience with this particular program, which is Randolph College in Lynchburg, Virginia, it felt like very magical.
Okay.
I know it's such a weird way to describe a program, but it felt very magical. I have a friend who always called it, Hogwarts.
Okay, Randolph's MFA program.
Yeah, because it just felt like we were in a just completely different world. And I think, so for that, to answer your question, I would say it's bittersweet. Like I was ready to be done with homework and everything, but the community that is there is just so strong and very supportive. And yeah, just I haven't really experienced anything like that other than being here at home, which means I chose the right program.
For sure.
Yeah, so it was great. And I also feel like I left with a lot of great tools. So I'm in a state of, and I know we talked about this, but I'm really in an intense state of rest.
Yeah.
Because it was a lot of work.
For sure.
A lot of emotional work, a lot of like financial, physical, mental work. And so I'm just really trying to process all that I learned and really sit with what kind of woman and person and artist do I want to be after that experience. So yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. What do you think, you might have slightly answered it, what do you think makes Randolph's program magical in that way? I love that description. I think it's a great description because I think to describe anything as magical, I think that means it like hits somewhere in the soul, I think, to really to utilize that vocabulary. So I'm wondering, like, especially because you know, to set the table with like other people don't have great experiences with their MFA programs. What do you think sets it apart, just having that personal experience with it?
I think it really prioritizes, which for me is really important, community. And so just to go a bit more into that, because I did kind of touch on it a little bit, but what I really appreciate about it is that the program focuses on developing mentorship and peers. So there's this clarity, this understanding that yes, you're in this program to learn something new, but you eventually will become the teacher's peer.
Sure.
Right? So it starts out as a form of mentorship. And there's really this clear respect for craft, for relationship, for anyone's individual goals.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is a typical experience in a traditional MFA program, right? Where they're kind of more so kind of gearing you towards the machine that's already in existence and is already kind of sucking out some of the creativity.
Extracting it from you.
Yeah, so it's very much trying to create a voice in you from what you have to match what's already there. Whereas this program is like, oh, I see this in you, or like, what is your individual? And it really, really inspires you to go after your own individual goals.
Sure.
Which I think is what I appreciate, because I'm very much a goal-oriented person.
Yeah.
So to allow me to have that freedom to say, well, what can my work look like? What can it turn into? What is it that I'm really passionate and obsessed with in my writing, and why? And so those kind of questions I found really helpful from the program, and just a way to move forward, I think.
For sure.
Yeah.
It reminds me of, I just was at an event and a gentleman came up to me afterwards and we were talking about sports for some reason. And we were talking about, well, it's sports in terms of community. And we were talking about track and field. I relayed that I ran track and field as a kid and it became my favorite team sport, which seems antithetical because it is made up of a bunch of individual competitions. Yeah. But what was really incredible is like, not only was I empowered to be good individually and chase my individual goals, what made it amazing was that we all were working towards that and then doing it together.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of the vibe that I get from this program is like, we want to empower the individual to do what they're great at. So that way those great contributions come back to the community and serve the community in that way.
That's really what it was. There was not, in my experience, any gatekeeping.
Okay.
It was more so of like, these are the achievable things you can access. And there's a lot of different paths. And yes, this program is one, but we won't make it seem as though this is what is the ultimate path of success. So whatever you do with this degree or this experience is completely up to you. But here are the tools that you need for what you ask for or what your goals are or what is like just the foundation of this program. So I got the opportunity to work with like an incredible author and poet and writer named Philip B. Williams, who recently came out with a book called Hours. It's really, really phenomenal. To me, it was very exciting to work with somebody that you have like in this high. I don't want to say put him on a pedestal, but you have
esteem. Like you got a lot of respect for that person. Yeah,
and then to like see how they are human and to be able to work with them and they kind of just help you navigate what your work can look like for you. Yeah. I thought that was really, I was just really impressed. I was like, this is the type of writer, this is an aspect as a writer, a characteristic of a writer I would like to possess. Like I want to be able to meet anyone and ask them what they need and really be a resource in that way. Yeah. Which is like affirming for what I think I already do.
For sure.
But it just kind of made me sit back and ask myself, how intentional am I being with that?
Okay. So, yeah. Did you get the opportunity to choose who you wanted to work with and get paired up with the program? I think that's awesome that they give you the opportunity to make that connection.
I would say we got an opportunity to bid.
Okay.
So like we made a list and we were like, this is someone I would like to work with.
Gotcha.
The program itself picked like the students and the mentor and everything. And so that for me was also a great like process.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I felt like when you look at their faculty, there was no way you could
go wrong.
Yeah. I was like, there's no way I could not have a great time.
Sure.
Or I could not have a full, fulfilling experience.
Yeah. You could list them in order of priority for yourself, but at the end of the day, if you got 10 instead of 1, it's not going to be significantly different. It's just going to be different of an experience. Yeah.
Right. Plus, my peers were like brilliant.
Yeah.
So, and by peers, I mean like the actual students in the program.
For sure.
So I'm just like, I'm like, you are... There's literally no way I could go wrong.
For sure.
Like, we're sharing resources, we're talking, we're supporting, we're writing together, we're asking each other questions and helping each other and like just really utilizing the resources that we all collected from different places as a way to support each other. So that was, I feel like a really nice gift.
For sure, 100%. The way that community forms in that way, I think, is really beautiful, and I appreciate you sharing that. And speaking of like finding mentors and like help figuring out how to develop a process or leaning into your full self as a writer and an author, I want to take a slight step back. You went to undergrad at Wooster.
Yes.
You credit, I read about a professor who you had there, Leslie Wingard, who you credit as the person who made you believe in yourself as a writer. And I wanted to ask a little bit about that. Could you share like what way she helped you to step into that full version of yourself or that more full version of yourself?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Nobody's ever asked me that.
For sure.
This Wooster is a PWI, and she was one of the only Black teachers, like Black professors that I saw on campus. And I went to that school with the intention to get a journalism degree or of some sort, actually. But then when I started taking English classes and I took her class, I was just really blown away by her, again, that kind of like freedom that she allowed to happen in her classroom, for us to wrestle with great questions about work, like Toni Morrison, right? That was the first time I had read also a Toni Morrison book when I got into her classroom, and I was just floored. The first book we read by her was Beloved, and the questions, the emotions, the clarity that came out of that experience, and then also her affirmation of like, oh, I recognize this is a passion for you.
Sure.
Here's an opportunity. You should really like pursue this. Here are more books you could read. And I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
Because it was something I struggled with as a kid, was actually to speak up and share my feelings, which is how I got into writing.
Okay.
But I was always really interested in like learning about communication styles and psychology and all of those things. But I was like, oh no, I just need to actually write and sit with myself and read and like ask and explore and be curious.
Yeah.
And she created space for me to do that. Yeah.
It's always amazing to me when I hear stories about being affirmed for the first time, because I've having gone through it over the last 4.5 years. It's like a really powerful thing. And it's like when you first feel or receive that bit of affirmation, it's like, oh my God, I could do some of this stuff.
Yeah.
I can really like, oh, I'm a part of this history or this community of people that are creating in a way that I've always wanted to, but maybe haven't felt affirmed or empowered to pursue.
Yeah.
Like, was creating and writing in this way, did it feel inaccessible when you were growing up as a kid? Or was it just like something that was just like, writing is not a career? Like, that's how it was posed to me. It's like, entertainment and stuff, that's for fun. Like, but we got to go to school, and like a lot of Asian communities know this, like to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer. I was adopted and raised by white people, so it wasn't necessarily that, but it was like, you go to school because you got to make money. And it's not necessarily about, oh, what are you really passionate about? What do you really love?
Yeah. And I think I think I did have some people in high school who recognized it. So I went to Charles Tinley High School.
Okay.
And I think some people did see my love of writing, but it stayed in conversation is more of like, how can you make this a career, go into journalism, or this is an opportunity for you to really process your feelings. So like, that's what this really works for, because I want to say I might have low-key been like an emo kid. Maybe.
For sure. You might have been. I was. So if we want to talk about it and break it down, I'll be like, yep, you was definitely on that spectrum.
Just maybe just a little bit. So like, the one in the back of the room probably writing poems. Like, I'm taking notes, but I'm writing poems.
You probably got like a headphone in, like
or I'm like writing stories or something like that, and just kind of in my own world a lot of the time. And so I just felt like there wasn't a lot of space for. Or nobody was really asking me that. I did have an aunt who would encourage me to write. Growing up, and we talk a lot about like what writing can do for me as a way for me to like process my own feelings and things. But I think she just wanted me to keep working it out. But in that classroom with Professor Wingard was really where it was like, oh no, you can actually do something with, like, you don't have to just do journalism. You can do something with your poems. You can do something with your stories. You can. Yeah.
Did journalism feel like, I think you kind of said it, but did that feel like the career path for writing, or were you passionate about journalism in any certain way?
It felt like a career path, more so than a passion. I mean, I was excited about the storytelling part. For sure.
Like journalism, you could go out in the community and report on the community.
Yeah. But then sometimes it's really, at least from how it was introduced to me, it's really easy to kind of get put in one place. Or one box, I think. So that was kind of because I also thought it would be cool to explore my curiosities. Like, I could ask questions as a journalist. And things like that. But
well, journalism almost feels like, okay, that's the permission slip you need to ask those questions. When in reality, it's not, you don't need that at all. But we've been kind of conditioned to feel like, oh, we got to ask first before we can actually ask the question. How does so Professor Wingard create space for you to explore yourself as a writer, not a journalist, but a writer, an author, creative. Wooster's also the time that Unlearn Arts begins. Like, you start to like...
A little later.
Oh, it's actually a little later. Okay.
Yeah,
I was wondering
bit later.
If there was like a specific instance post like this space being created for you that led you to want to start Unlearn Arts. Was that born specifically out of, or was it like, okay, I'm writing now I need to be the space facilitator? Yeah,
it's actually like a series of events that led to that, which I think her class, it definitely inspired it to eventually become what it is now. But no, at that point in time, right, thinking about like the career and things like that, I was really torn with not focusing on journalism as a career option. As a young person, I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? So I wrote a letter to myself, like a commitment letter to myself. And I was like, if this is something, if you are going to change your major to English and become a poet or a writer, you really need to commit to this. Like, I really need you to shift something in yourself to really go after this. Like, pour everything into it. And so from that moment on, I think I really tried to be consistent in my pursuit of whatever the craft was. And so that looked like I started an open mic. I lived in a what it was, a program house. That's what it was. A program house with other women on campus. And I asked them if they would be comfortable if we opened up our house to have an open mic. They said yes. And so I invited all these people and we had an open mic for a while. And then I met the president of the poetry club on campus.
Okay.
We eventually collaborated. Then we started the Cup Seed Slam team there. And I'm not sure how kept it was after that. But then shortly after that, I came home and I was just kind of like, oh, I would like to see this happen here. What does this look like?
Yeah.
And so then that's when I went to, I forget what the place was called, but I know they had an event called the Breakfast Club. And so that's where I saw, it's probably gonna come to me later.
That's all right.
And somebody's watching this is probably gonna be like, Chantel, this is what it was called.
They're in the comments right now. It's this.
Yeah, I'm like, I can't remember what the place was called, but it had a lot of poetry events happening there. And that was my first time seeing like an open mic in the city.
Okay, yeah.
And so I got to see like Rahima McNeil, Gabrielle Patterson, Tony Sticks, Pernell was there.
Okay.
I think January York was there.
Oh, wow.
So it was like a lot of people who were.
Wait, was this the first open mic? All of these folks were there? This is like,
this was just my first time there.
But they were all there to perform.
Yeah.
Damn.
And so, I was just like blown away. I was like, wow, like, what is this? Like, how do I like find this again? How do I get involved with this? And I think from there, like that was another moment of inspiration.
For sure.
And so I think this is just a long way of me getting to Unlearn Arts, but me being inspired and writing and doing all of these things, and then I wrote my book.
Yeah.
And my book, Bursting at the Seams. And so after I finished the book, I was just like, well, what else do you do now? Like, do you write another book? Yes, probably, right? But like, there has to be more to writing than just the book.
Right.
And I've always, in that regard, been a part of a community of some sort.
Sure.
So that's where Unlearn Arts was born, more so like after the graduation, after the book.
Okay,
and then
gotcha.
And then I was like, well, I am studying these people, and so let me share what I'm studying.
Yeah.
So I'd open it up like, I'm not an expert, I'm not an expert teacher or anything, but this is a curriculum based in Black literature that I am like studying. And here's what I've studied, and we can talk about it and write together. Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that. And I appreciate you kind of sharing the series of events that leads up to it because, again, and this is something we talk about a lot, in the social media era, we see the picture on the social media, but we don't see everything that led into whatever it is that we're talking about, And it's like, you could have just said, well, Unlearn Arts started like this, but like we would have missed all that context. So I really appreciate you providing the context because one, it gives us a solid foundation to build from. But two, like that open mic, damn, like that lineup is fire. Like, can we have another one of those, like with all of those same people, because I would be like, to think about it from your perspective and then bring all of them back to do something now, like what would that even be like? It would be incredible, I feel like. And also because thinking about just like timelines, this is now, I would love to see it come back together just to see how different things are, especially how we're navigating the world right now. But I appreciate you talking about like this came together because it's like, these are who I'm learning from. And I want to share this information, particularly with communities that I both hail from and historically have been pushed to the margins, not given opportunity or access to stuff like this. And like creating in this way is an act of resisting that marginalization. And I love that you do it in community. And so I wanted to ask, I read an article where you talked about how Mari Evans and Etheridge Knight, shout out to Etheridge Knight, fellow Naptown poets, valued the writing workshop and like writing together. So I wanted to ask you, for you, and you started to scratch the surface a little bit here, but what does it mean to write in community? Because when I think about being an author or poet, a lot of times it's an individual act, or even it's been represented or presented to us as individual.
Yeah.
But as I've done this work, like I found like I create best in community. So for you as an author, as a poet, and as somebody who's facilitated these spaces, had them facilitated for you, what does that mean for you to write in that way?
Yeah. I think that's a great question because that is something I would love to kind of push against a lot of the times in terms of people's creative practice. But also, I just want to say, technically, and I think a lot of people don't really typically think about it this way, but you are already writing in community, right? If you are using a piece of writing to inspire you or someone else's prompt, in a sense, you are writing in community, right? So like for me, a lot of my work, a lot of the time is in conversation with writers like Mari Evans, Audre Lorde. And if it's in conversation, that means it's in community. It's in the pot of it all. For sure. Right. And so I think that is one of the main ways that I like to like reassure people that creativity happens for sure. I mean, it can happen in solitude, but it definitely happens in community as well. And then I think the benefit of it is just being able to, bounce ideas off of one another, to know that just physically you're not alone, or, spiritually, or sometimes somebody is like, and I also think that too, creativity is a very spiritual practice. I know that sounds very like woo-woo, but I think it can be a very spiritual practice in a sense of like, it is allowing you the space to work through whatever it is internally, creatively, right? You're approaching or sharing something and you're using your light to ignite somebody else's light as an inspiration in that sense. But I do think creativity or writing in community can just provide way more avenues than a lot of people may get when they write alone.
For sure. I appreciate you reframing that for me because you're 100% right. I love the language of in conversation with, like just reading a book, like you are kind of sitting in conversation with that author about what they're talking about. And like for me, like it takes literally one sentence or one passage for me to be like, oh shit, now I need to write something about this because it's informing my experience. Yeah. And now I am expressing that for myself. And I think the other thing about it that as you were talking, I was thinking about is we're in the era of monetization. And I think what I've found has been difficult is to just create for the sake of creation, to express and to tap into that spiritual aspect of it, and not do it because, I'm going to post this to the gram, or I'm going to go to Arts Council and be like, hey, you want to pay me to do this? Like, yes, we need to sustain ourselves 100%, and we need the equitable pay conversation needs to be had. And I think this rush to succeed or even to fail pulls us out of, like you were talking about, like pulls away at the creativity that we really want to tap into, the spiritual aspect of it, in favor of, well, now I can make ends meet, because we have to make ends meet in order to continue creating. I don't know. I'm just saying stuff, but it's just like what you were talking about is just like making me think about the ways that we extract from creatives, unfortunately, and how writing in community, I feel like, can help us maybe pull some up, build that foundation a little bit. Yeah. I don't know.
I think that, also, I think that speaks to just like American culture. Yes. How there's just this benefit of basically, like you were saying, this benefit from capitalism, like fear-mongering kind of thing where like, if you are afraid that you can't make a living, you're more likely to feed the machine than you are to and depend on it. So therefore, you'll keep it alive versus like, learning that your creativity can be sustainable outside of this bigger, larger machine that is given this illusion that it's needed. And I think too, right now, one of the books that I'm reading to kind of help not necessarily restore, but kind of help me reframe or rethink or just rediscover what creativity means to me right now is I'm reading The Artist's Way. I feel like I can't remember her last name, but
we'll have when I clip this, we will have the cover of the book popping up right now.
Okay. The Artist's Way, and I'm only in like the first chapter, and so I think it's broken up over like 8 weeks. Of the way that the artist, and this can be of any art form, can revisit or rediscover or restore their creativity. And so she kind of talks about all of this, like how the illusion that we won't be okay or we won't be sustainable with creativity is sometimes more of a detriment to us than actually just pursuing the creative thing. Yeah. And so she I think it's been really helpful, particularly her practice of doing something called the morning pages, where you write 3 pages every morning. And you don't think about it, you just get it out. And it's supposed to be like a stream of consciousness journaling. So that way you can kind of move into yours, whatever creative practice is, in a more clear way. So like you flushed out all
natural, like authentically moving into it instead of like forcing it. Yeah.
And so that has been honestly very refreshing for me to approach my creative practice.
Well, it makes sense because you talked about, you're in a period of intense rest, intentional rest, because of how much you've just had to give to the MFA program, which comes off the back of like not only doing Unlearn Arts, but going to Wooster and like just getting to the point where you can now be like, okay, I want to take some time. I love the idea of like thinking about restoring creativity because I just love the visual that it gives me, and I'm not going to be able to do a good job of describing it here, but it makes sense that you're in that period right now. Do you feel like you're restoring creativity post MFA, or is it more just like the bumper rails to get you back into that mode of creating as you get further away from now having graduated?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's the latter, the bumper rails, because I don't think the MFA took away any creativity from me. It left me with a lot of questions and a lot of emotions and a lot of things to process. And so there's so much that needs to be weeded out to know what's mine, what's not mine, where should I start, like what is the next thing? Which a lot of people, they usually ask you after something happens, right? You graduate, marriage,
what are you gonna do next?
Right. You
when are you gonna have kids?
Yeah, right.
Hey, mind your own business, bro. Damn.
And so, I'm also asking that question. I'm like, and I'm really okay with telling people I don't know. Because it just hasn't come yet. And I have to figure it out. So
I appreciate you modeling that for us, because a lot of people are not okay with being like, I don't know, because we feel pressured into having that go-to response ready or knowing immediately like what it is that next step's going to be. You said one of the questions that you're trying to figure out right now is like, what's mine and what's not mine? And I kind of piqued my interest. What does that mean? Like when you're trying, what are you trying to figure out what is yours and what's not?
Yeah, what is mine and what is not mine? I think when you take in a lot of information, sometimes there are things that you resonate with. And it's kind of like one of those situations where you go somewhere or I wouldn't say that. I would say you ask someone for some advice and they're like, take what resonates and leave what doesn't. And I think for me, because I was so interested in learning, I took in a lot of things, and I just need to figure out what is mine basically is like, what is my responsibility to carry out in my work versus what is my responsibility to carry out in community? What belongs to me, or what did I learn from this person? And that is not something that I probably need to concern myself with at this point in time, but it is a important cause that I'd like to return to, but it's not immediate at this moment.
Yeah.
So just kind of those kind of things. And I think I'm just processing through that.
For sure. I appreciate you sharing that. One of the things that you mentioned earlier was like when you were growing up, it wasn't necessarily like super encouraged about writing as a career, maybe. Like you were just doing it on your own. I read that you had, or maybe I heard this in an interview you did, that your mother was a creative and that you had an uncle who had a great storytelling voice. What I wanted to ask about when I was hearing that was like, we've talked about Mari Evans and Etheridge Knight and talking about like people who've inspired you, particularly when you got to Wooster, learning about Toni Morrison, Bell Hooks, like all new Black female authors, specifically Black queer authors. Do you remember as a kid, like in growing up, who like your guardians, your parents, or whoever adult figures were learning and from and listening to at that time? And was that influencing you, or come back to influence you as you stepped into a more to your own individual creative practice?
Oh, absolutely. I come from a huge family. My mom is one of 9. My dad is one of 2, and but I mostly grew up with my mom. And sometimes I was living on and off with one of my aunts. Yeah. And so my aunts would tell me a lot of stories about my mom to help kind of help me have an understanding of who and how she came to be, because she wasn't exactly very open, or she is more so now. Yeah. But growing up, I think she was just really focused on like working and all those things. And so she did kind of step away from her own artistry, which was visual art, and she had a lot of cool opportunities. And so they would tell me about all of her opportunities, all of the things that they believed inspired her. And then they would also tell me about people I didn't know. So like my grandmother, and maybe like my grandfather on my mom's side as well, who I got a chance to spend time with, but not in an age where I could ask him really intentional questions. Like I only was around him mostly as a kid, so I was able to I was just excited to have a grandpa, right? For sure. So yeah, but didn't have any real context to ask him anything specific about how he grew up or anything like that. So yeah, I think it definitely comes from my family, for sure, because they are all storytellers. And I think once they found out that my love of writing was this extensive, now I have some aunts who will pull me to the side and intentionally tell me stories because they know I'll write about them. Or, my uncles sometimes will tell me stories because they know I will write about them. Yeah. And I just think it's fascinating that they have so many stories to tell and so much to say. And they're like, did I ever tell you about this time? I've even done interviews for people. Yeah. Like
for them,
just to begin to preserve history. And so that's kind of been like unknowingly my role in my family in a way. Yeah. As a way to just honor and hold or tell stories or,
I appreciate you sharing that. It makes me think, okay, so I have 2 parts to this, I think. One, you talked about trying to figure out the responsibility. And I love that you share, like, you've become now kind of the unofficial storyteller of your family's history. Do you feel like it's a responsibility to now share this history just from your own, like, specific lineage of family? Do you feel like it's a responsibility, or it's just something that you want to do? Like, you're just passionate about sharing that story?
I would say it's a little bit of both.
Sure. And I know you're still like, we're talking about like in the moment, like we're figuring out and answering these questions like now. And I'm not expecting you like, do you have this figured out? Do you feel responsible for this? But just like, I'm just interested in like thinking about it like in that sense. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think we're all still learning, and even them, they're still learning, and my cousins as well. Like we're all just kind of learning together.
Yeah.
So I think it's a little bit of both. I do feel a bit responsible, as well as it is something I'm passionate about. I very much love my family. I'm very much I feel like a community like nothing about me is here because I did it by myself. Everything about me is the way it is because I'm in community with other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your family's like your first community. For better or worse, for people like that's your first community that you're a part of. First like quote unquote system that you are in. And okay, so I appreciate you sharing that. We have a mutual friend, Thomas Nealon, also a poet. And I was in a program with him last year, and he was working on a project spurred by the concept of critical fabulation, coined by Saadia Hartman, also an author, which I thought was really fascinating because, and I apologize, Thomas, I'm probably not defining it correctly, but essentially what you're doing, critical fabulation is trying to tell the stories of people who are no longer here and like giving them voice, even though you don't necessarily know specifically one-to-one what happened in their life. You're filling it in a little bit.
Yeah.
As I was hearing you share about telling your family stories, I was thinking about, that made me think about this concept of like trying to fill in those gaps. I love this idea of being like pulled to the side at a family gathering and be like, hey, did you know about this? Do you feel like when you're telling or getting ready to retell that story in whatever form or way, do you feel like you tap into, how do you fill those gaps? Like, well, are there gaps that need to be filled in?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
That's a question I ask all the time. That is the question. What are the gaps? What gaps need to be filled? What gaps need to exist?
Oh,
right?
okay.
As a way to ask a greater question to the reader, to whoever it is that is interacting with my poem or my artistic, whatever the thing may be, right? Yeah, I hope that, and that is one of my hopes when it comes to my work, is that it does unlock more curiosity for whoever is interacting with me. And so, yeah, I don't come to the page with answers. I don't come to like any conversation or room or anything with answers as well. So I value questions. I value the lack of information because that means, there's like more doors.
Yeah. Oh,
there's
I love that.
More room to explore. Yeah. And so, yeah, that's a great question. What are the gaps? Are there gaps?
Sure.
Is
that so let's talk a little bit about process then. Is that the foundation for when you start writing, or when you're approaching a creative output? And or is it like, do you have an audience in particular in mind when you're getting ready to put pen to page?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Not necessarily in terms of your question about the audience. I don't necessarily have an audience. And I don't come to it with any extreme parameters apart from perhaps whatever the form is that I may be writing in, or the prompt. But even still, it's more so like training wheels versus like it's actual physical present form. It's like something to just help me enter the thing.
Sure.
And then,
it's the guiding framework. And
yeah. So it doesn't have to stay here. It's just something to help me be in it at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So walk us, if you don't mind, walking us through kind of that process. Like, is it form first and then that's the start and then you utilize that as your guide? Or how do you, Chantel, approach that when you're getting ready to create?
It really just depends on the day.
Okay, I like that too.
There's nothing specific.
Okay.
Sometimes it can be a prompt. And that's what I mean. Sometimes it can be a prompt. Sometimes it can be a form. So it may be like the form today is contrapuntal or something like that. And so
what was that?
Contrapuntal. Contrapuntal.
Contrapuntal. I need a definition.
So a contrapuntal poem is you can read a poem in multiple directions.
Interesting.
Yeah, backwards, forwards, up, down, like that, right? And so I don't enter the writing process of this particular form knowing that I'll master it.
Sure.
Right? But I am interested to see what will come out of it.
It's another door, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and there's so many forms. There's so many different things that you can do with the same poem even.
Yeah.
So like maybe today I'll write it in a contrapuntal and then I may take out a favorite word or a line or something and then try to write a sonnet with it or something like that. And so now I'm like shaping it and see what it does.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's just so many things that can happen. And it doesn't have a specific type of order.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's just like it births another thing. Like you said, you pull out a word or a phrase or something that you wrote in a completely different form and it leads to something new.
Yeah. I think the consistent maybe routine part of it all would probably just be the actual routine of writing.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're in the 3 pages of writing right now as like a practice. Do you have a particular routine that you like to employ other than I'm going to write today?
Nope.
Nice.
No. And that's what she encourages.
Sure.
She's just like, just write.
Yeah.
When you wake up, just write the 3 pages and just let everything kind of flood out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're from Indy.
Yes.
And I like what I really enjoy, I think, from what I've experienced with your work and the way that you interact in the community here in the city is like, I feel like that is it's evident a little bit and that the passion for the city, I think, is evident, at least from my perspective. And I know our Venn diagram of connections is starting to become more circular-like. I don't remember who told me that or who used that metaphor, but I'm using it a lot now. So shout out to that person. And I feel like from what I've heard from other folks who talk about your work, like that's what I get too. And so I'm wondering for you, as someone who's born, raised here, a product of the city, how do you define Indianapolis or what does Indianapolis mean to you?
That is a great question. Indianapolis means a lot to me. I think the definition for me is always changing. Mostly, though, these days, the definition is home.
Okay.
More than anything. At least that's just what I think of when I think of Indianapolis. There's so much here that just keeps me grounded and I feel so grateful for. The community is amazing and I think we still have so much to do creatively in terms of like in spaces and space making. And by in spaces, I mean physically and as well as like contextually, like how are we creating spaces for people to enter them? Yeah. In terms of like events and things like that. And so that's kind of what I think of. I just think of home. I think of opportunity to play. Yeah. And community. Yeah. Yeah.
First off, I love that answer. I think something I've discovered over the last year and a half that I've been really focused on Indy for the first time, even though I've lived here on and off for over a decade, has been the creative wellspring that exists here of talent, of incredible people doing incredible things. And like growing up in rural Indiana, but even when I lived here at first, like my viewpoint of Indianapolis or Indiana in general was like, it's not a creative place. It's not a place where that exists. And yet I continue to uncover it. Every single time we have a conversation on the show or just run into somebody on the street, like you see a lot of really incredible things happening. As someone who's part of like the author and literary scene here in the city, I'm wondering, like, that's like a sub part of this like larger creative diaspora that I feel like I just would never have known about had I not worked at Tomorrow Bookstore and learned, oh, there's like 16,000 bookstores opening up here in the city. That's awesome. What do you think is something that Indy does well in the literary space that someone might not expect?
Yeah, I think for me, I definitely love the open mic scene. Like the open mics here are incredible. I think what also is happening in the literary scene is just that there's a lot of uncharted territory right now. So a lot of stories, especially in the last couple years, I feel pretty new.
Yeah.
In terms of like how they're being shared.
Okay.
And I also love that there's more crossover in genres.
Oh, okay.
So there's a lot more appreciation in screenwriting and playwriting, and like it seems like it's blossoming a bit more. Which is what I love to see, because I mean it's all encompassing. It's all part of the literary community.
For sure.
Yeah.
You and fellow creative and poet Mitchell L.H. Douglas, who are part of that community, helped coalesce it a little bit with Proof last year, a Midwest literary festival. And I feel like we're talking about, this creative community and talent that we have here. I feel like Proof is born out of that strength.
Yes.
So talking about like space making, and not only the physical spaces, but the contextual space that those physical spaces take up. What does it mean to like be a part of bringing that to life, and to also like be the person opening the doors to these unexplored avenues that we have available to us?
Yeah. I'm thinking about Mitchell, a quote that he always says, and I feel like I always mess it up, but I probably never do, and I don't know.
Well, that's the beautiful thing about interpretation. Is like the quote takes on added context because it's coming from you as well.
Yeah. So. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Takes the pressure out.
I don't know if that's the right way. I'm not saying misquote people on purpose. I'm just in this very specific context.
Yes. But no, he has this quote where he says, art improves the quality of life. And I love that quote.
Yeah.
And I think that is why it is so important to do something like Proof, And I don't just think it's me. I think it's us together for sure, because we've done so many other projects together.
Yeah.
And so that was probably one of our biggest, and it was incredible to see so many people come together to kind of explore and show some support to the literary community with the bookstores and the conversation pieces, and no pun intended.
I'm taking it.
And with the open mic that we had, and just like all the different moving pieces, the children having an opportunity to kind of explore and share their voices or read stories together. And it was just a really nice, I feel like a very tiny microscopic reflection of the literary arts community here. I hope I answered your question.
No, for sure.
But I think that was the hope, that it opened up something for somebody somewhere, and created either more of an opportunity or more of a sense of like, oh yeah, this is what I love.
Yeah. Well, it's a door that a lot of people don't realize is available to them in whatever hallway or building that they are navigating at the moment. That is their life. Yeah. And y'all not only put the door up, but you opened it for people to be able to step through and to have those revelations. That's where we first met.
Yeah.
In person. And we were only there for a couple hours, but the energy was very palpable. I think especially to bring the litany of bookstores that have cropped up over the last 2 years together in that way. The Indy book crawl just happened recently. And like, those things are things that people are really excited about. Like, not the bookstores themselves, but the community members, like to be a part of something like that, because for whatever reason, the pandemic has made readers out of a lot of us or brought us back to reading. And what I think is really interesting is like you see book clubs and stuff now popping up all over the place. And I've had the privilege to sit in some book clubs and be like, man, people really love this stuff. And when you can find that particular niche that people are passionate about, and you can get those people together and have a great conversation, like, it's incredible to see what comes out of that. And proof is that it's proof of that, pun intended. And also, like, it is. So we just had Tina Algren and Ronak Shah on to talk about education. And something that Tina says, like, you could barely scratch the surface in 2 hours on all the information about public education in Indiana. And that's just in Indiana. I think like it's similar to literature and the literary community here in Indiana, Indianapolis specifically, is that we don't necessarily have enough time to even get into the real deep, true history of how that's existed here.
Yeah.
But you all are giving people the opportunity to at least enter into that space, and they can take their time to go down that path if they want.
Yeah.
Which I think is really important about what we've talked about throughout this episode is creating a community. We need to know the community exists first if we want to create and be a part of it.
Yeah.
I think with an event like this too, it makes me think about the things that creatives have to do in order to sustain the creative output that they do. Events like this need sponsors. It brings up the business side of creative pursuit as well.
Yeah.
When it comes to, from your perspective, when it comes to like the literary space or what you do as an author and as somebody who throws events too, how do you balance the passion and the business aspects of it while you pursue this work that you're truly passionate about?
Well, one, for sure, community.
It's the year community on the show, so if that was the answer for every question, that would be fun.
I mean, honestly, for the most part, it is, because it's almost impossible to do anything by yourself.
Yeah.
And it's less fun.
100%. 100%.
You know, so for example, I've had the pleasure of being able to work a lot with Maurice Broadus.
Yep.
And Cafe Creative.
Yep.
Which they have their cohorts of creatives that they bring in to teach entrepreneurial skills about the artist life, which has been really helpful for me, and also really helpful in a business sense, but also in terms of like just having relationships with other artists who I share these questions with. And it's been really helpful to like support them and watch them grow and be inspired by them, and also share whatever it is that I do know or learn in that way. And so I think I have learned, just to give a more practical answer, I think what I've learned in terms of balancing that is you have to make space in your schedule for both. So just like I said, there's the routine of writing, sure. Right? There also has to be like the routine of business. Like there's just certain, so I work really well with lists. I work really well with like particular like emails. Like I always tell people, if it's a business endeavor, please email me versus like texting or Instagram, because I will forget instantly.
I'm affirming you in that. I'm the same way. Give it to me in an email or I'm probably going to forget about it.
Yeah.
No offense to everyone out there watching this.
I know, and I feel so bad, but I'm like, you know, at least I also feel affirmed from you and that community as well, knowing that it is okay as a creative to say what you need.
For sure.
It is okay as a creative to create boundaries for yourself and for other people, because one thing about a creative, sometimes it can be really murky, the relationship and business partnerships that you can kind of you can kind of find yourself in a space where you're over pouring yourself, and then there's no,
because they're extracting. It's transactional for them when it's like real for you.
And so that can be hard on the craft as well as the business,
for sure.
Right. So it's really important for me to have boundaries. So like also. If you, as I think we talked about before, I take a lot of breaks from Instagram. Quite often for my own like mental clarity, as well as business. I think it helps me to focus more too, because I don't want to be reliant on Instagram.
For sure.
It's a great tool, but it is not the main, cog in the engine thing.
For sure. Right? As much as they want to say that it is, it's not.
Yeah. at least for me. Maybe other people, for sure, it is more of a necessity.
Yeah.
But for me, it is something that can become a distraction.
For sure. I feel you. I'm like, when can I take a permanent break from social media forever? But I don't know if that will ever come. I really appreciate you coming through and sharing everything that you've shared so far, not only about your own story, but about the community here and how like all of those things come together to do what it is that you do and that we do. I feel like I say this every episode, but I could sit here for about 3 more hours and talk all about the craft that you do. But I'm like, we've been sitting here for 60 minutes. So I want to make sure I'm being respectful of your time and my team's time. So I got a few more questions before we wrap it up.
Okay.
The first one is, we've talked a lot about the literary community here just in the last couple of minutes. I'm wondering, this is mid-April. We've got, how many? 8 more months of the year left. What do you hope to see in like the lit space here in Indy in 2025?
I hope to see it just, I guess that sounds a little, now. I'm trying to be more specific in my answers, because I think everything sounds really like poetic and flowery, and it's like, no, I mean I am, but I need it to sound like, what would you actually like to see?
Yeah.
No, I would definitely like to see just a sustainability of what is already there.
Ooh, okay.
And also maybe perhaps it growing. So I really appreciate how people are asking people to come out to bookstores.
Sure.
I really appreciate how much collaboration I see as well in the literary arts space, where more people are creating projects, or there are a lot of crossover, so for example, like Mariah Ivy's Nourish Well exhibit was really great. And I really enjoyed seeing like her work amongst the visual artists' work as well, because I love thinking about like poetry as a visual art piece as well, right? So I think that is really cool to see, and I hope that is sustainable. I hope it thrives and grows, and there's more collaboration, there's more opportunities, there's more spaces in which people are really asking, how can we value the work of words? How can we really value the art of the word, and poetry and spoken word, and how are these things working together, and how is it impacting and improving our health and life here in Indianapolis?
That's a bar right there.
Yeah.
That's getting clipped for sure. How do we value the work of words? Ooh,
yeah,
that's powerful. I love it. More collaboration for sure. I'm drawing a lot of parallels to our conversation about education, and I'm going to figure out how we can tie these things together. But yeah, I love that. Speaking of just talking about collaboration, community, you talked a little bit about like we can't do these things all by ourselves, even if we might write on our own, or maybe not in isolation, but just in our own space. Like we're always like usually we're in community in some form or fashion. We have a recurring segment on the show called Give Them Their Flowers, where we ask our guests to shout out or highlight or share someone or an entity that they feel like deserves their flowers at the moment. So Chantel, I wanted to ask you, who do you feel like deserves their flowers today?
Yeah, Man, there's so many people.
For sure.
But I want to say for sure, because you said this comes out in April.
Yep. April 15th.
Okay.
Today is April 15th.
Okay. I want to give a shout out to Korie Griggs.
Oh, yep. Former guest, friend of the show.
Yeah, because this, April's her birthday month. And so I think, of course you got to give people their flowers on their
Gotta give them the flowers on their birthday.
Yeah.
Shout out to Korie, who gave us a literal conversation piece.
Yeah,
that she made. I carry around every recording. So
yeah, I think Korie's work and Korie as a person, I think she's just incredible. And I mean, there's so many people I also think of in this moment as well. But you said there's like one person.
You can rattle off names if you want.
I feel like I start thinking about one of those things. Never mind. I'm just being goofy. It makes
me think of the credit roll, and it's just like a button like going really fast. It's like
who? But, or like have you heard like J. Cole? His what was the album where he was like sitting on a roof and then there was like
Forest Hills Drive,
I think there's like a song. I forget the song. I forget the song, but there's like an end of the song. He's just like shouting out all these people for like 10 minutes on the song.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
So I don't want to do that, but I feel that way in my heart
for sure. Well, because it's always way more people than we realize.
Yeah, I think so for sure. Because, like I said, I definitely think I'm a product of other people, but I would have to say my family for sure. After, and my mom also, because April is also her birthday month too. So yeah, but I think it's just so many people I can think of. Yeah, I have like a huge family, so I'm just saying all the family.
For sure.
And yeah.
Shout out to family. Shout out to Korie Griggs. And shout out to Madeline McKinnon and Frida's Flowers for sponsoring this segment. Frida's Flowers, Indy, for all your floral needs. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. I got 2 more questions for you.
Okay.
And then I'll let you get out of here. We said at the top in your intro, avid anime lover. Your top 3 anime currently and why?
Top 3 anime. Well, for all of them, it's probably the same reason, honestly.
Okay.
I love the way anime values friendship. I love the way. Yeah. I love the way anime values a good underdog story.
Yep.
Yeah. And then also, I mean, the music is always great too.
Always banging.
Yeah.
For sure.
So I would have to say my favorite, which is currently not what I'm watching, but my favorite is probably the Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood.
Yep.
And then after that is Naruto, so many other people's favorites. And then probably Hunter x Hunter would be the last favorite. But what I'm watching is Solo Leveling, which I think is almost over. Well, the season is almost over.
Yeah. 3 staples, I think, in the anime genre, for sure. And I think Solo Leveling is well on its way to becoming one of those. I've heard nothing but incredible things about it. You told me a lot about it when we met at Tease Me, but I like that. I like that Attack on Titan wasn't one of them. Because I feel like I know a ton of people who love the show, and I like it, but I'm like, I don't know if it's my top anime.
Yeah.
There are some good ones. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
And thank you for sharing the reasons. I love that community literally is a through line. I feel like community is in too many of the titles of too many of the episodes that we've shared. So I'm going to figure out a different word for community.
Yeah.
But I appreciate not only you sharing your own personal experience, but why it's so important and how it fuels the work that kind of we all do. It permeates the work that we all do.
I just thought about something.
Go for it.
And I would be remiss if I didn't. Also, if I could give flowers to someone,
throw them out.
Would be Eric Saunders.
Okay.
Actually, too, because he was, before all of that, the things I said, he actually was my substitute teacher in high school once, or maybe I was in 8th grade. One of those.
Sure.
And that was actually the first time I think I saw somebody do poetry.
Okay.
In like real life. Now that I think about it.
I literally almost asked you that question way earlier in this conversation.
Yeah, no, he was probably the first person actually, because he was our teacher and everybody, and it felt like it was a scene from a movie. Everybody was loud in the classroom and everybody was saying something, and then there was a girl who was really loud, and she was like, "Girl, boo," or something like that. You know, not even listening to him, trying to get our attention. And as soon as he heard that, he was like, "Girl, boo, you don't even know." He just kept, and he just made an entire poem, and slowly the class was like, and then he was like, "Yeah, I write poems. I'm a poet. I'm also a teacher." And he just listed off these things that he did. He taught the class. And at the end of the class, he was like, "If anybody wants to write a poem or they want to learn about poetry, I'll be here after class. You can come ask me questions." And sure enough, I walked up to him and I asked him questions about poetry. And we found out that our families actually were connected in terms of like my mom was friends with his mom.
That's
or
wild.
something. I know.
That's so
it's
wild.
really wild. And then we eventually got a chance to work together at Tease Me, actually.
Oh, nice.
For a while, we hosted the open mic.
Yeah.
The youth open mic that was there for a while. And yeah, I just feel like I'd be remiss to also, like, I have to give him flowers too. And I think his birthday is also in April as well.
April babies, for sure. I like it.
So
Well, shout out Eric Saunders, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Damn, I feel like now there's questions. See, there's questions now that I want to ask about that, but we don't have the time. I wish we had more of it, but I really, really appreciate you coming and giving us this time, like, and sharing so much of your story. Like, it really means a lot to me, and I'm walking out of this conversation inspired to do a little bit more writing myself. So thank you again, just for giving us the time, and for folks watching or listening right now who want to support you, find you, follow you, however they can do that. What if you want them to? Well, how do they do so?
Yeah, I was going to say, you can't find me anywhere right now.
Yeah, just to support, just drop the find. And I said this last time, I'm like, that sounds kind of strange. How do they support you going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I will be back on Instagram eventually, and so my Instagram for sure. If people want to follow when you can find it. You can also purchase my book, VK Press website, because I know everybody. We're not doing Amazon.
No Amazon.
So yeah, you can purchase my book from the publisher. You can also come out and see me perform anywhere. And then also I would encourage people to also just support the literary arts community in general, because I'm a part of that community.
Yeah.
And so all of its functions in whatever way people can support it also help to support me as well.
For sure.
So yeah.
Well, we will link your potentially existent Instagram in the show notes. We'll link to your book, Bursting at the Seams, as well. And if you have some organizations, send them my way that for lit art organizations that you really want supported, we'll put them in there too. So y'all can go out and support that community, and by extension, support Chantel's work as well. Yeah. Thank you so much for doing this. For everybody else, new episodes of the show drop every Tuesday on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Go to conversationpiecePod.com for merch, for the open door, and for everything else Conversation Piece related at Conversation Piece Pod on all the social media channels, specifically just Instagram. And yeah, we have a not related to the podcast, but cool AAPI-focused community market happening on May 4th. It's a Sunday from 11 to 2 right here in the Stutz in the Space Lounge. So be on the lookout for that. It should be being promoted right now, but I'm promoting it right now on the show because it's my show and I can do what I want. But with that out of the way, that's been John Overton and Popular Rapture on the mics, Mike Lee and Mike Lee Productions on the cameras. Shout out to Pattern and shout out to the team at the Stutz Building for letting us use this incredible space. Shout out to Madeline McKinnon and Frida's Flowers for the flowers. And last but not least, shout out to Chantel Massey for being an incredible guest.
Thank you.
You're absolutely welcome. 100%. Oh, and last but not least, shout out to me for hosting the show. I've been Patrick Armstrong, and this has been Conversation Piece. We'll see y'all soon.
We're good? You good?